All right, thank you, Robert. Happy Friday, everyone. As Robert said, we will be reviewing updated SEBB WACs and policies during today's webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. So on the agenda today, first we'll be covering some policy updates in accordance to the SEBB program. Next, we'll get into some WAC updates that occurred. Lastly, we'll be going over some of the SEBB program benefit updates. And then, of course, lastly, we will be going over some reminders, tips, and resources for all of you. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So the SEBB program has approved changes to policies effective September 1st of 2020 and changes to benefits effective January 1st of 2021. Sounds really weird when I say that year. We will also be offering another webinar in September to discuss the SEBB annual open enrollment and benefit changes. And just a reminder that annual open enrollment this year will be held from October 26th through November 23rd of 2020. And all enrollments and changes that occur during annual open enrollment will be effective January 1st of 2021. So the first policy that we will be going over that had a change is policy 11-1, and that is providing a notice to a school employee. So the new rule states that employees eligible for benefits must have no less than 10 calendar days after the date of notice to elect coverage. So what exactly does that look like? I wanted to provide some scenarios for you to put this in a little bit more perspective for you. So our first scenario, we have an employee whose date of eligibility is September 1st of 2020. Now keep in mind that it is the BA's responsibility to provide notice to that employee of their eligibility on September 1st. So the employee should be notified as well on their date of eligibility on September 1st. So Robert, when would this employee's initial enrollment period end?
So, Sarah, I believe that every employee is allowed 31 days to enroll and elect their benefits. So if the BA notified that employee on September 1st, 31 days later, I think that would come out to about October 2nd.
Correct. So October 2nd is when that employee's initial enrollment period will end. Now, let's say that this employee was not notified of their eligibility until towards the end of their initial enrollment period on September 25th. Now, in accordance to this new rule, how many days will this employee now be offered to elect benefits beginning September 25th?
So Sarah, you said on the previous slide, they at least have 10 days. So I'm thinking if they're notified late on September 25th, 10 days later, that would be October 5th.
Yes. So that employee needs to be given at least a 10-day enrollment period in accordance to this new rule. So since they were notified on September 25th, they would have until October 5th to make their elections.
So Sarah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what happens after October 2nd in SEBB My Account for the employee?
Great question, Robert. So that employee's newly eligible tab is actually going to close out, and that employee will be defaulted as of October 3rd. So if the employee is needing to make their elections because of this new rule outside of their initial enrollment period, they're going to need to submit a paper enrollment form to their BA, and their BA is going to need to process that enrollment form in SEBB My Account. So overall, it creates a lot more work for everyone. So best practice is just going to ensure that you are notifying your employees of their eligibility on their date of eligibility. In this case, it would be September 1st.
So I could see why it's really important that the BA notify them as soon as possible once they're eligible for benefits. But I do have a question. So what happens after the 31 days and they're notified, let's say on day 40? Do they still get that 10 days?
Yep. So in accordance to this new rule, even if they are notified completely outside of their initial enrollment period, they still have to be allowed at least 10 calendar days to make their elections.
Okay, great.
It just all has to be done via paper enrollment, which creates a little bit more work for everyone. And then just a quick reminder that the date of notice, so the date that the employee receives their notice of eligibility, that is not going to have an effect or determine the effective date of coverage.
Hey, Sarah, I do have a question here. So the question is, can we notify the employee before their date of eligibility? Again, you can notify them before their date of eligibility, but they won't be allowed to go into SEBB My Account and start making changes until their date of eligibility. So once their date of eligibility is entered into SEBB My Account, they will get 31 days. We're talking calendar day, which includes the weekends, to make their elections.
All right, thank you for that. So the next policy is 31-1, and that is covering verifying dependent eligibility before enrollment. So the new rule states that proof of a marriage or state registered domestic partnership still being valid can now be from the last 6 months. So previously that proof had to be from the last 2 months. So we went ahead and changed that to the last 6 months. And just a reminder that the examples of proof documents can be a bank statement, a utility bill, an insurance policy card, or even a lease agreement that has both names on there. Now, we understand that sometimes you receive documents from employees and you may be unsure if you're able to use those as proof. So if you run into a situation like that, feel free to send us that document to us in a fuse, and we'll go ahead and work individually with you to see if we're able to accept that documentation as proof of that marriage or state registered domestic partnership being valid.
Hey, Sarah, on these examples of proof of documents, I believe that both of their names have to be on like their utility bill, insurance card, and the bank statements, they are allowed to blacken out all financial information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I do have another question from a BA here. So what does the BA processing the paper form mean? Can we input the info, and do we need to send it to Fuse? Well, you wouldn't send it through Fuse. The BAs would be able to go in there and they can make those changes as long as they're within the lower limit. You can make those changes as a benefit administrator for that SEB organization. So even though the employee has defaulted into the default plans on day 32, as a BA, you can go in there and make those plan selections or elections for that employee.
All right. So still on 31-1 of the verifying dependent eligibility before enrollment. So when an employee goes to enroll a new dependent onto benefits, we all know that they are needing to submit dependent verification so that we can verify that that dependent is eligible to be on SEBB benefits, right? So employees who are moving from the PEB program, which PEB is actually the sister program to SEBB. PEB provides benefits to the state agencies, all state agencies, higher education, and some employer groups. So if we have an employee who is moving from PEB over to SEBB, and they are wanting to enroll an eligible extended or disabled dependent who is previously on PEB, they don't have to submit the dependent verification documents to us. We can actually verify them using their dependent verification that they already submitted in PEB. Now, keep in mind that this is not a process that will automatically occur, and there are some steps that are involved in getting this done. So let's go ahead and review those steps. So the first step is it is the employee's responsibility to inform the BA if any of their dependents were previously enrolled and verified in PEB. The reason for this is because SEBB My Account does not have a way of communicating to the PEB Pay 1 system, which is the system that stores that dependent verification and showing that dependent as verified. Once the BA is informed of that dependent already being verified on PEB, they will need to send a fuse to outreach and training with all of the employee and the dependent's information. That information needs to include the full name, the date of birth, and full social security numbers so that we can get in and verify. Once we receive that fuse, the outreach and training department will go ahead and get into the PEB program to verify the employee's dependent. Once the employee's dependent is good to go and verified, we will go ahead and get into SEBB My Account, and we will reflect that dependent as verified.
So I do have a question that I want to clear up because I have actually two people asking the same questions. So the question is, though, is what if the employee don't have any? So basically, the question is a marriage license enough to be able to enroll a spouse onto their account? So the policy does state that you must have a marriage certificate to include proof of the marriage is valid. Like Sarah said earlier on that previous slide, you got to have that utility bill, bank statement. You just cannot approve a dependent or verify a dependent just off the marriage certificate by itself. And again, please send us a few if you have other documents that could be verified by the outreach and training. So she had a list of a few, such as the marriage certificate or correction, the bank statement, utility bill, but there are other documents. If you have any questions, please send us a few. You've got to have 2 documents before you can verify that dependent to be eligible.
Yeah, we have to have that proof of that relationship still being valid. So very important. Thank you, Robert.
And there's a simple question. Lower limit is 2 months. It's actually about 3 months. Take a look at the lower limit calendar on the BA website, and you'll know what the lower limit date is.
All right, thank you.
Or you can look at the last webinar, and I talked about the lower limit.
That's right, because we did, I think it was 2 webinars ago, we covered error correction with lower limit. So good resource there. All right, so let's go ahead and go over what changes occurred to the special open enrollment matrix. So specifically, we are looking at the SOE event number 13, and that is gain or lose eligibility for Medicaid or CHIP. So there was some language that was changed in this section. We went ahead, we changed the word entitled to enrolled. The reason for that is because the employee or dependent must be enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP for this SOE event to even occur. They no longer can just be entitled. And then we also stated that an employee may not waive enrollment in SEBB Medical when they or their dependent enroll in or lose eligibility for Medicaid or CHIP. So they no longer are able to waive enrollment in SEBB Medical when they enroll in or lose eligibility for Medicaid or CHIP. They used to be able to do that, so that changed. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the WACs that had some changes to them. The first WAC is 182.32.2020, and that covers appealing a decision made by a SEBB org about eligibility, premium surcharges, or enrollment and benefits. So we should all know by now that during the appeals process, once the employee sends in a written request for administrative review to their SEBB organizations, that the SEBB org has 30 days to respond to that written request. Now, if that written request is not responded to within 30 days, on the 31st day, it is automatically deemed denied. So let's take a look at the SEBB appeals process to see how this looks. So on step 1, you can see that it starts with the SEBB organization. They either deny enrollment or eligibility. Now, if the employee does not agree with that denial, they have the right to submit a request for a review to their SEBB org no later than 30 days after that date of denial. They send that back to their SEBB organization, and that's when the SEBB organization has 30 days to respond to that request for review. Now, if the SEBB org does not respond within that 30 days, on the 31st day, it is deemed denied, and it goes back to the employee, and the employee has 30 days to respond and submit their appeal to the SEBB appeals unit. So basically, if the SEBB org does not respond within that 30 days, they basically give up their right to be able to approve or deny that request for review, and it goes straight to that SEBB appeals unit.
Hey, Sarah?
Yes.
I did want to clear up something. I might have missaid it, but the employee has 31 days from the date of eligibility that's entered into SEBB My Account, not 31 days from when they're notified. Again, if you notify an employee on September 25th, now they only have 10 days. So it's 31 days from the date of eligibility that's entered into SEBB My Account. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, the next WAC we'll be covering is 182.31.110, and this basically explains what options are available for employees who are on FMLA and PFML. So this WAC states that employees on approved leave under PFML may continue to receive the employer contribution towards their benefits. Now this is as long as their PFML runs concurrent with FMLA for at least 1 day. So the day their FMLA is ending, their PFML must pick up on that day, so they overlap at least 1 day in order for that employee to remain eligible for the employer contribution. Now, also a reminder that the ESD, they are the ones that are responsible for determining the employee eligibility for PFML. It is not up to the SEBB orgs and is not up to HCA to determine that eligibility for PFML. It's all in the hands of ESD.
So between FMLA and PFML, there can't be a break in coverage at all, or a
There
break.
cannot. Nope, they
Yeah.
have to, it has to overlap at least 1 day. That's the minimum, at least 1 day. It's the key
Okay.
there.
Interesting.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the SEBB program updates that occurred. We're going to be covering a few of them. And then, like I said before, the September 28th webinar coming up later on in September, we will be covering more of the benefit updates that are effective January 1st. So when it comes to SEBB organizations who are engaging in local negotiation for employee eligibility, it is required that they negotiate within the range of the anticipated work hours. So there's nothing new with this rule. There was just a little bit of wording that changed for clarification. And it basically just states that those employees who are becoming eligible via local negotiations, they must work no less than 180 hours, but they must work less than the threshold to meet the SEBB eligibility, which is 630 hours. So employees eligible via local negotiation, they must work a minimum of 180 hours, but no more than 630 hours.
So basically the policy's just the same. They just changed the wording, no less than 180 and
But
less than 629.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. So this has always been in place. They just changed the wording up a little bit. So we just wanted to point that out, and I figured it was a good reminder.
Hey, Sarah, there is one question. What if they are not FMLA eligible, but eligible for PFML? So eligible just for PFML, they are not eligible for the employer contribution. You must be eligible for FMLA, and again, with a no break onto that PFML. You just can't be eligible for PFML by itself in order to be eligible for the employer contribution. Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, so an eligibility update. So for those employees who establish eligibility for the employer contribution towards benefits during the month of August, so that's them working their 630th hour in August, their benefits are going to begin on September 1st, as long as that employee who worked that 630th hour in August, as long as they are determined to be eligible for the employer contribution going into the new school year for that new school year that begins on September 1st. Now, this only applies to current employees who reach 630 hours in August. It does not apply to new employees. So I do have some scenarios we're going to go over next to kind of clear up the air on this and what this looks like in different scenarios. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So we have Fred. Fred reaches 630 hours on August 12th. Fred is also determined to be eligible for benefits for the 2021 school year. So since Fred was determined to be eligible for benefits going into that new school year, Fred's benefits would be effective September 1st. Now on the flip side, we have Sam, who reaches 630 hours on August 2nd. Now Sam is not determined to be eligible for the 2021 school year. So in this scenario, since Sam was not determined to be eligible going into that new school year, Sam is going to remain ineligible and no worksheet is required to let her know that she remains ineligible. But also keep in mind that the 630 hours that Sam worked this year, they will count towards the 2-year look back rule.
So I'm thinking, Sarah, that because they work 630 hours in August, and if they work 630 hours the previous year, which is now they have 2 years of working at 630, they would qualify under the 2-year look back rule.
Yes. Yep.
So they're
So
presumed
Sam,
eligible unless the SEBB determines that they're not, and they have to do that in writing, let the employee know.
correct. So yes. So if Sam worked 630 last year, and here we are again in August, and Sam worked that 630 again, via the 2-year look back rule, Sam would be deemed eligible.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into some reminders, tips, and resources. So the first reminder that I just wanted to remind everyone about, since we are getting in and determining eligibility going into that new school year, that all hours an employee receives compensation for on approved leave, so that's sick leave, personal leave, shared leave, etc., or a paid holiday, all of those hours must be included when determining eligibility. And when it comes to leave without pay, school employees who are returning from approved leave without pay, they will maintain or establish eligibility for the employer contribution as long as they were anticipated to work 630 hours at the start of the school year. Now, this employee's date of eligibility is going to be the date that they returned from approved leave, and their coverage effective date will be the first day of the month following the return to work. So if we have an employee who came back with us from approved leave without pay on, let's say, October 15th, October 15th will be their date of eligibility, and their effective date will be November 1st. All right, so some exciting news in SEBB My Account. If you haven't already noticed, there is a new report available in there. It is called the Benefit Admin Contact List Report. This is going to come in very handy if you have an employee who is a transfer and the district they are transferring from did not transfer them out. This report will allow you to get in and view all benefit admins for each district, and allows you to, it provides you with their email and names and all of that so that you're able to get a hold of them to have them perform that transfer out. Now, if you go to the report section of SEBB My Account, and in the dropdown, you select Benefit Admin Contact List, and then click Run Report, it's going to come up with a screen that looks like this. Well, similar to this. Oops. I did blank out all of the contact information, but just know when you do run this report in SEBB My Account, it will populate all of that information. You have the option to use the report within SEBB My Account, or you can also download it into an Excel file. And automatically, the report is going to alphabetically order the school districts. Now, there are many, many, many pages on this report. So in order to narrow it down, you can use this filters feature in either of the columns. And if you're looking for a certain school district, you can search that school district, or if you're looking for a certain BA, you can go ahead and search by their name or their email address.
So this is really important that the BAs update their contact information under their organizational profile.
Yes, very important. So just make sure you keep that contact information up to date as much as possible, because now that this report is available, it's going to be real time and have everyone listed on your contact for your district. It will be listed on this report.
So I do have a question I want to clear up, because it seems like I have at least 2 or 3 of them. So if a leave return comes back on the first day of school, 9/1, does their coverage start 9/1 or 10/1? And again, if they return from leave without pay on 9/1 or prior to the start of the school year, their coverage starts on the day that they return. So after the school, say if your school starts 9/8 and the employee returns on 9/9, then their coverage would start on the first day of the following month. Okay.
Good clarification. Thank you. All right, so we already covered this in our past webinars, but I just wanted to send out a reminder that there was a Gov delivery sent out on June 22nd. And in that Gov delivery, it is clarifying what optional benefits SEB orgs are able to provide to their employees and what benefits cannot be provided. And here is a list of the benefits that are able to be offered during the 2021 and 21-22 school year.
Hey, Sarah, I have a question here.
Okay.
So we are getting some questions on the D worksheets and when are they going to be available? At this time, we don't have a date that they'll be available and posted on the BA website, but we will definitely let you know when they have been approved and ready for you all to start using them. Also, I think Sarah might have covered this in a previous slide about if you have a member coming from PEB coming on to the SEB program, again, they can be verified through the PEB Pay One system. They don't have to submit their dependent verification documents unless they want to. Again, we can go into the Pay One system for PEB, verify that that dependent was enrolled in PEB, and then we can make that update on the SEB My Account system.
It's just a matter of that employee informing their BA, letting them know that that dependent was on PEB and verified, because we will automatically know. Again, that does not automatically occur, so there are some steps that go into that. All right. So speaking of Gov Delivery, I hope that everyone who is listening today is signed up for Gov Delivery, because this is how outreach and training sends their notices and updates to school districts. If you have not already signed up for Gov Delivery, please be sure to do so via the BA website. You'll click on notices and updates, and then in this green box it says register for Gov Delivery. Click that button and it will walk you right through the steps to get all registered, and then you'll start receiving those Gov Deliveries. All right, let's go over some Fuse tips. So we do ask that when sending Fuse messages, please remember to include full details. That needs to include your SEB organization. Unfortunately, if you do not include your SEB org in your Fuse message, it does not automatically let us know what district you are with. And so it makes it a little tough for us to be able to answer your questions or solve your issues. In that message, please also include, along with your SEB org, the employee's first and last name, their date of birth, and their full social security number so we're able to locate who we're talking about. Please choose the applicable category based on your scenario or question so we ensure that it gets to the correct department. And we ask, please, please, please respond within the same Fuse message for additional information on that message. The reason why is because Fuse messages do get auto-assigned to staff. So you may send one message on Monday regarding John Doe. And on Tuesday, if you create another Fuse message explaining more about John Doe, it can get assigned to two different staff members, and they may have no idea that there's two messages out there about John Doe. Think of Fuse as an email. So when you receive an email and you go to reply to it, you're not going in and you're not creating a new email to send to someone that send the email to someone that you should just be replying to. So think of Fuse as an email, and please ensure that you're responding within the same Fuse message.
This is really important because sometimes we're asked to go in there and help out with fuses. And I see the BA signature block, their name on the bottom, but there's no SEB organization. So for us to go into SEB My Account, we need to know what SEB organization to look for and search for. So that's really difficult for us when we see your email address, but then we have to research and find out what school email address does that belong to. So it takes the process even longer to figure out the email addresses for each. So if you guys, or if you all could just add that your school district underneath your name when you complete the Fuse, that we would really appreciate that.
And we really appreciate you wanting to say thank you or have a great day, or that you appreciate our help. But we ask that you please do not reply to Fuse messages once your issue has been resolved, because in reality, that is just one more Fuse that is going into the bucket of Fuses that we have to take the time to go in and delete. So we really appreciate you wanting to do that, but we ask, please, please don't respond to your Fuses once your issue has already been resolved. All right, so some resources. Let's go ahead and get into that. So we, of course, have the BA website, which I've mentioned a few times. This is a great resource for, like I said, training materials, the WACs, the policies, the different worksheets, so many great resources on the BA website. So if you have not already familiarized yourself with it, I ask that you please go and maybe explore around and get a little familiar with the BA website. Our outreach and training is always here for you. We have the 1-800-700-1555 number. And then, of course, we have the Fuse secured messaging system that is totally secure, that you're able to send social security numbers and all employee information via the Fuse messaging system. I also wanted to provide a link to the SEBB board. The SEBB board does meet, I believe, once a month. And so you can go in and you can see any upcoming meetings and past meeting materials when it comes to the SEBB board. All right, upcoming webinar. So we have September 28th. We're going to be going over the SEBB annual open enrollment and benefit changes. We did go ahead and get that registration open for you guys today. So be sure to go in and register. Here is the link to register, or you can also register via the BA website by going to the training schedule, and it should be listed on there. And again, all of our webinars start at 10 a.m. And then just a reminder, I know we mentioned before, but all of our webinars, they are recorded and posted to the BA website, typically the next week after our webinar. So this webinar will be posted next week on the BA website. But this is a really great resource for the BAs that have been with us for a while, but they may just need a refresher, or any new BAs coming on board. It's very helpful to be able to go in and review the webinars that we have already done trainings on. And you can also find the PowerPoint presentations next to the recorded webinars. All right,
All right.
Robert, looks like we're ready for some questions.
Great job, Sarah. Man, it was just really smooth. So again, we're at the end of this presentation. We will address some questions that we didn't get a chance. And again, any questions that we're not able to address during the webinar, we will definitely reply by either a phone call, email, or Fuse to you. And as long as we're on, continue to send those messages through the question feature there. And again, if you have any of those specific questions or scenarios that's related to your individual SEB organization, please send us that through Fuse so we can have time to research and get you the right answer. And then after this webinar, to all participants, you will also receive an email which includes a brief survey, and we would greatly appreciate any feedback from you all so that we can improve your experience during our webinars. So continue to send us those your questions that pertain to this webinar. And if they don't pertain to this webinar, feel free to send us a Fuse. So I do have one question here, Sarah. If we have someone not previously eligible, but will be as of 9/1, we need to send the D worksheet, but they are not available. So what do we do for the employee? So the D worksheet, even though it's not available, you would use the B series worksheets for this because this is an existing employee and now they're eligible as of 9/1. So use the appropriate B worksheet for this employee. A lot of good questions here. So here's a question here. Why can't new hires not make a new election prior to September 1 for coverage effective September 1? So employees that are entered into SEB My Account cannot make elections. That newly hired tab will not be available until their date of eligibility, which starts counting their 31-day enrollment period. So there's a question here. Please state what the eligibility date versus the start date is. So there is a higher date that you enter into SEBB My Account, and then the date of eligibility in SEBB My Account. So there are two different entries into the employment tab for the employee. So the start date is, I guess you're asking about the hire date, and that's the date that you actually hired that person. Might not necessarily be the same as when they're eligible for benefits. They might not be eligible when they get hired, but maybe 6 months later they reach that 630 hours, and now they're eligible. So that eligibility date would be later on compared to their start date or hire date. So there is another question here. When I did my new hire worksheet, the hire date was 8/26. I guess that's when the employee got hired, and the eligibility as of 9/1. The worksheet came back that they had until 9/26. Is that correct? So as of 9/1, they have 31 days from 9/1 to make their elections and set my account. So not sure why it came back 9/26, but it should have came back October 2nd that they had to make their elections as the example that we used in here. So here's another one for the SOE of marriage. Is it fine for each person to submit a utility bill or a bank statement at the same address? Therefore, they are submitting two documents at the same address but listed separately. Of course, it shows that they're both living in the same residence. So yes, that is not the effective date, but the date they start in an eligible position. So your effective date, I believe that would be pertaining to locally negotiated employees. So you do have a date of eligibility block in there that you would input. And that is the date that the employee started in that eligible position, that they're eligible for benefits. And SEBB My Account automatically starts keeping track of that 31 days automatically. And now on day 32, they're automatically defaulted. And at no time do you ever have to enter the effective coverage date, because that's SEBB My Account will automatically start benefits for that employee. You don't have to enter that date, just the date of eligibility, which starts the 31-day clock. So there is a question here. Can you try and update the fuse to create auto signature lines with the SEB org? And I'm not sure how much authority the healthcare authority has over fuse. I think it's a separate software that we use. So I'm not sure if we can do that or not, but we will definitely look into it. And again, if you look at the last webinar, when it came to error correction, I did discuss how the lower limit counter is used and how you can determine how far you can go back before that you must go into error correction. There is a lower limit date on the right-hand side of that calendar. That's as far as BAs can go back to make corrections. So that effective date block in the enrollment tab is the date for the collective bargaining agreement, whatever date is on that collective bargaining agreement. And again, those questions that we're not able to answer during this period here, we will definitely respond either through phone, email, or through a fuse back to you to get you the right answer. And if you have specific questions that pertain to your SEBB org or scenarios that are happening within your SEBB org, please send us that through fuse so we can research that and get you the right answer.
All right, Robert, do we want to go ahead and wrap this up?
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much everyone for participating. I really appreciate it. Happy Friday, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. And again, we'll get back to you with the questions that we may need to look further into via fuse, email, or phone.
Thank you all for joining us. And again, happy Friday. Have a great weekend.